Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Born to Innovate podcast. And today I'm joined by a special guest, Mr. John Thompson. John is the founder and CEO of Exepron, whose company is changing the project management space with this technology. Thanks for joining me today, John.
Okay, thanks, Sid. So just a small correction. A co-founder, there's two of us in the business, both experienced in project management, scheduling, logistics, in many different environments, and strange twist on logistics, new product development, engineering products. So logistics to us is not just moving goods and services, it's actually some of the products that we've actually developed. In the past, my background is forestry. But that gave me the opportunity to design systems, extraction systems, in other words, railway linkage, truck transport, extraction systems, moving timber basically for processing to different timber mills. Now, having said that, here's the twist. To us, logistics was purely just a factory without a roof. So whether you're moving administrative paperwork inside your internal operations for finance, billing, etc., or you're running a production line, or you're running a complete logistics equation, to us that's just a factory without a roof. It doesn't matter. What we learned over the years was identifying the sequence of limitations. And if you can get correct and predict the correct sequence of limitations, and investing in that sequence, you'll find that you have very, very short paybacks in very short period of time. So our real strength is logistics and seeing through problems, identifying what is holding back the entire system. And then what we did is we were going to write a book which actually makes information static. It stops growing once you publish. About 15 years ago, when SaaS, that's software as a service or cloud models came out, cloud opportunity, we saw this as, well, let's make a living book and just keep updating it. And from that background, we said, well, why don't we hard code it into a product, capture all our knowledge and keep updating it? So that's the birth of Exepron. So all that knowledge, years of experience, probably close to 40 years by two founders, is built into the product.
Interesting. So starting from a completely different industry, forestry, building up years of knowledge, and then using that to build a SaaS product. So can you share a bit more about your role and what you're doing nowadays at Exepron?
Okay, so as operating officer, all I'm doing is really coordinating and enhancing the product, adding to the product, talking to customers about their issues. Our customers range is very interesting. Pre-COVID, we were in about 15 countries. And we actually won the President's Award for, now it sounds impressive, but we were like 2 or 3 accounts in different countries, which gave us, and many different industry types, which gave us insights into the logistic requirement from shipbuilding, aircraft maintenance, construction, and even neonatal intensive care, like IT, DevOps, and so on. So many different industry types, learning and building their requirement into the product into a generic format. And trying to keep it simple at the same time. So we work with one watchword, and that is it has to be intuitive. So what does intuition mean? An intuitive product is quite simply, it has to be obvious at first glance. No learning. So it's like opening up an app on Apple, clicking a button, and suddenly you kind of intuitively know how it works. So that's our interface is what we mean by an intuitive product. So keeping it simple, but being able to schedule successfully in many, many different environments. So we've got a generic intelligence hidden behind the user interface. So the product's simple. There's a lot of intelligence in there, 40 years of intelligence from many different environments, adding to the product and enhancing its needs and adapting it.
So right now the tech landscape is changing a lot. There's a lot of new advancements coming out. What major shifts are you seeing in your industry right now?
We probably saw AI coming, and we built the intelligence on AI a long time ago, built into the product almost probably 8 years ago. We were dabbling with AI. So what we have now is built that intelligence in the back end. So what is running is business intelligence and AI intelligence, and we're moving into something called, we've termed real intelligence. So what does that mean? Real intelligence to us is trying to create the digital twin of your environment and looking at reality into the scheduling process. So it's not the delusion of gathering research and experimentation. It's actually looking at the current situation, current status, and using all of the intelligence to predict within a project, but more importantly, across the portfolio of scheduled. It could be routers, it could be projects, it could be anything. It could be all of the babies in a neonatal intensive care. The same thing, the principles apply no matter where you are. And that means that we can schedule and view the future based on the current activities and the current status and the layout of routings, network availability of resources in the future. And by that, we can identify emerging constraints. And from that, we know where our process improvement needs to take place. If there's a constant constraint keep surfacing based on the product mix, that would be a point for investigation, for investment. And if you can find those constant constraints in the future, call it debottlenecking, call it choke points, whatever it is. But investigation and applying, it doesn't always mean money. It means thought, activities, process, maybe new technology, maybe investment. But investing something on those pinch points to debottleneck the flow. So what is the holy grail? The only way to create value in a competitive market is short lead times and on-time delivery. Everybody has the same product saying the same thing in markets in the same way. So to create shorter lead times and maintain on-time delivery, that's a competitive advantage. And that's what we do across the product range. And we basically constantly shortening the lead time and maintaining reliable supply. That's the objectives of what we're doing.
And is that an industry-wide problem or like unique to your business?
Look, now everybody talks about Amazon, but if you look at one thing that they did from the inception to today, and they're shortening it even further, it's reliable on-time delivery in the shortest possible time. Every single focus that they did was to shorten the lead time, more convenience, and have it reliably supplied, highly predictable. And that is the drive. Every single step, investment, whatever they did, there's a classic. Walmart, on-shelf availability, same thing. All they're doing is making sure that they're striving for 100% on-shelf availability. When you walk in, you find what you want, period. Now, how they do that is the magic behind the scenes, right? But that's whether you've got a huge logistics equation over thousands of miles trying to bring products in, or on-shelf stocking. It's the same problem. One is micro, the one is macro. It's just a factory without a roof if you look at it logistically. It comes full circle back to first principles.
Interesting. So I want to touch on the point you mentioned how your company has been an early adopter in AI technology. You were building it back like 8, 9 years ago. So with all the advancements that have come out recently, is AI like helping or hurting your business, and in what way?
No, for sure. No, it's helping our business in two ways. One is programming. It's rapidly allowed us to program. Now, some of the program, well, most of it is delusional first time round. It requires over and over refinement, but we probably, a single programmer DevOps is probably doing 5, maybe 15 times more productivity using AI programming. So is it helping? For sure it's helping. It helps us update our product. Look, there's only one competitive advantage. Once you're ahead, stay ahead, because your competitors have a long way to catch up. Okay? So staying ahead is important. That means just keep innovating.
That's interesting. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, sure. Think about it this way. If you put two parallel lines, so if you're growing, right, and you're going up in terms of feature functionality and growth, meaningful features, not just features for feature's sake, but meaningful features that bring value. And your competitors copy you perfectly, let's say 6 months later. They're trying to, where your research dollars stop, they are trying to imitate you. And where your research dollars stop, theirs start. Never let them do that. In other words, they're trying to play catch up all the time. Now, the gap between two parallel lines, if I put two parallel lines, a straight line between that gap is significant. I've got to keep that gap going. Even if they copy me perfectly, they're still way behind. Until I slow down, that's when they catch up. I can't stop. That's the downside of especially IT. But that's the downside of maintaining, staying ahead in it with innovative product.
So you're staying ahead of everyone by constantly innovating, constantly building new features. So I'm curious, like, what's going well in the business right now?
What's going well is
Mm-hmm.
we strive for one thing, customer value. We're proud of what our customers are doing in terms of shortening their lead time and making themselves more competitive. And if we can keep them doing that, then we stay ahead. So anything that we can do in different sectors, we have sectors we prefer, like aircraft maintenance, repair, and overhaul. We love that. We love MTO. Things where you got shortish lead times and the feedback period is quick. That's where you get great results. So anything that you can, like a repetitive schedule over a year of, let's say, 30 aircraft over a year, we can repeat that process over and over again and refine it in very, very short periods of time. Identifying bottlenecks, choke points, investing effort, money, time, resources, technology into those choke points and shortening it up, constantly shortening their lead times. That's our biggest strength, yeah.
And on the other side of things, I'm sure like running a business for as long as you have, you face many obstacles along the way. So what are some of the biggest challenges that you faced and how did you overcome them?
COVID was a big one. Taking on concentration of customer. In other words, taking on some big customers and thinking that's great, and then having them get hit by COVID, like we were. Those kind of ups and downs. But I tell you, if you start or run a business, it's going to go up and down. Period. And you just have to stay in the middle, even keel, no emotion. It's just business, and be able to back off when you need to and take a breather. Don't get too hung up or too emotional. It's not going to get you anywhere. I'll give it to you another way. When the bombs are falling, don't panic.
That's
It'll kill you. Just don't panic. That's all. Never panic. Step back. Think. You don't step into problems. You step out of problems. Step back and look at them.
And what are some strategies or ways you've used to like keep pushing forward and keep innovating even during those times that you mentioned, like the COVID times, which was challenging?
Stay in contact with your customers that are generating value. You've got ABC type customers. A customers are ones that are, let's call it not just your best customers. They have great relationships, and understanding what's holding them up in terms of logistics or things that you could help. Okay. So stay in touch with your A customers. Your C customers are a big opportunity. Those are customers that buy from you rarely, but they're large, and they could be bigger customers. And if their supplier can't supply, you should give them an absolute unbelievable service to get in the back door, because they start suddenly thinking, oh, there's other alternatives out there. So those are 2 or 3 strategies to get in there is keep innovating with your customers in a partnership. And then on the other side is taking that capability into, I call them C-level. They're opportunities, but they're just not your customer. And suddenly, if you can really outperform, then they start looking at you, and that's making your opportunities. You make your serendipity, right?
That's interesting. I've never heard that term before of like A level versus C level customers, but I'll definitely keep note of that.
Mm.
And so what's your main focus right now? Like what metrics are you most focused on improving?
Yeah, again, innovation. It's not new. Look, what's the biggest risk? New customer, new product. That's the biggest risk by far. So you're either going to take existing customers with new product or new innovation that meets their needs, or you're going to go the other way and you're going to go to say new product, sorry, new customers with old product. Now that would be your B customers. Okay, the B customers, they don't really show loyalty. They'll, for $1 in price change or swing, they'll move. Okay, you've got to show them through product performance that you're a lot more reliable, stable. Your product is better than a competitor's. So that would be your B customers, is new customers potentially, but show no loyalty, or the existing customers infrequent, but they show no loyalty, but you have great product that services them when they need you.
I like your way of thinking, and I think it differs from some of the other people I've spoken to on the podcast. When I ask, like, what's the biggest risk? Maybe they'll say, like, churning or losing customers, but you're thinking about the other way around. The biggest risk is new customers, and you're constantly thinking in, like, the positive sense.
Look, I'll give it to you another way. What's the biggest lever you have in your hand is gross margin. But my definition of gross margin is different to most definitions. I do not include labor because we don't get rid of people. What we do have is sales minus the true variable cost to vendor. I call that contribution margin. That's the biggest lever you have in your hand. If you do a simple calculation, and that is using the same resources, you're not hiring or firing anybody, the same overhead costs, same fixed costs. You want to dilute those fixed costs with transactional volume. After that, once the fixed costs are stabilized, there's only one lever in your hand left, and that is significant transactional volume, meaning more sales, but watching the vendor costs, and that gives you your contribution margin. There's a disproportion between reduction in, let's simply say reduction in lead time. A 30% reduction in lead time is a 40% increase in gross margin without cost increase. I'm going to say that again slowly. Once your costs are fixed, labor included, a 30% reduction in lead time will generate a 40% gross margin increase. It's totally disproportional. That's why logistics are so important. It's a money maker. It's a generating money, it's shortening lead time and maintaining 100% delivery.
That's the first time I've heard that.
Yeah. You see what you're driving for, it's not top line sales, it's driving for gross margin over the fixed cost. So you're diluting the fixed cost with more and more and more transaction by shortening the lead time. And most of that drops through to the bottom line as net profit.
So we talked a lot about what you're working on right now. So now, looking forward to the future, what's your vision for the company like 6, 12 months down the line?
So where we're working right now is working, as I said, it's the ABC customer base, looking at existing products with existing customers and enhancing them. And then the other way is new customers with existing product. So one is to innovate and meet their needs, whatever that is. We're also looking at incorporating financial modules. What I described in accounting is building that kind of logic into it doesn't break away from general accounting practice, which is the worst way to make a decision, by the way. I'll give you the basis of it. A delivered product, does not have a profit margin. A company has a product margin. In other words, all transactions. So if I try to speculate at a product margin or product profit and call one product more profitable than another, what I really said is my allocation of subjective costing to a product, I can make any product look profitable. It's just subjective allocation of cost. Okay, so what I forecast in next year's budget 6 months ago is not going to be the product mix that happens 6 months from now. It's going to be completely different, but my allocation of cost is based on a fictitious, delusional, just like AI, a delusional cost, a subjective cost allocation from 6 months ago. And I run with that as my premise. It's completely false. Companies have bank accounts, products don't have bank accounts. And that's the logic we're building in and helping People who are, look, there's two kinds of customers. Three. Those who are desperate, if this doesn't work, we're dead because we've tried everything else. The other one, they're ambitious but don't know how to get there. We have the rules incorporated, built in. We have a governance system that will show you and guide your logistics. And now we're building, you asked where we're going, is building that financial thinking into the profitability behind the logistics.
And then if you could solve like one major challenge today, what would it be?
Marketing. Understanding. We're up against lack of understanding. Even just the word project management. If you look at most project management tools, they're not project management tools. They're task management tools. And then they move one step further up into a historic collation of delays. I'll repeat that. All they're doing is collating all of the delays and creating a new baseline. You know, we have baseline 1, baseline 2, baseline 3. What they're doing is they're recording all the delays instead of preempting the days and hitting them before they get out of control. So you need a proper priority system. That's what the intelligence is showing you into the future of what's going to happen to you if you don't deal with it today.
So most of your competitors, rather than solving the problems you're seeing, they're just monitoring the problems. And that's where it's tough to differentiate yourself from them.
I'll tell you what it is. It's the collation of too much historic data that you can do nothing about because it's too late. That's the traditional way of managing a project. And then they use human capital or human brute force to overcome those problems. Now there are some, I call them serial project managers or serial project management officers that have that capability. It's an intuitive, innate thing that they can predict the future based on their experience, but it takes years and years of experience to build up that kind of understanding. And they're very few and far between who can actually deliver on time and budget. So we've taken that knowledge and built it into the rules in the back end. And that's our innovation, is capturing that knowledge and building it into the back end and priority system. So people have guidance and governance.
Can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, sure. So think about software. When you write software, it's compiled. In other words, before you run it or deploy it, you check that the actual components can actually run. Then you put them together and you recheck that they can run. So you compile software. It's rules-based. It's got to follow certain rules to make it actually function. So think about it as a project, same thing. It follows rules. You can't have milestones stuck in the middle of nowhere just because you think that's when it's going to occur, or even worse, you have milestones stuck in the middle of where the sales sold them on a golf course to some customer. And then you budget around that and do the cash flow of where they think things are going to happen. It's not going to happen. So complete dependencies, no successor, no missing successors, no missing milestones in the wrong place, and let the project actually run and find its own level of dating before you start putting milestones in and checking, double checking. We also build, part of the governance is building projects from, or schedules from the end with the end in mind. So we build from right to left. And that way you get a lot more parallel activity, shortening up the schedule, and you get a lot more intelligence built in and unlikely to miss some of the tasks by simply asking a simple question. In order to achieve task A, what absolutely must be in place? What is necessary to complete? And that will give you 3 or 4 tasks that need to be in place. But if you're building from left to right, it becomes very linear. I need this, then I need that, and I need this, and I need that. The probability of missing something is very high unless you're experienced.
I'm learning a ton. So the main thing I'm gaining is how you're always staying prepared for the unprepared, and that's what's allowed you to outlast all the competition over all these years.
Looking into the future, you got to preempt it. You can't tomorrow. Yeah, look, yesterday's solution is today's poison. It's real simple. Watch out. What was a great solution 10 years ago, especially through AI and so on, is suddenly today's poison. So yesterday's medicine's today's poison. Be careful. You got to check everything. And that's where you're looking into the future and trying to understand where we stuck. And it's even worse than that. We look for things that confirm our bias. We resonate with them. Here's the real challenge, is actually looking for things that challenge you. In other words, somebody says something and it jars you. It actually clashes with you. That's exactly the route you've got to go and look for. You don't have to explore more of what you already know just because it makes you feel comfortable. You've got to go and explore things that make you feel really uncomfortable. Somebody says something and it clashes. It's like, I don't like that. Well, why don't you like it? There's a contradiction. Here's another tip. The world is made up of contradictions that don't exist. What does exist is your assumption stuck in between the middle of two contradictions. Your view, somebody else's, but there's something missing. There are no if you can solve that and expose that contradiction, what it's based on, you've actually got a breakthrough.
That's powerful. So, John, I know you're probably super busy and we're right around the half hour. So I think we can wrap up the podcast there. Last thing is, for anyone who's watching this who maybe wants to learn more about your company or maybe work with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
So what they can do is get hold of me, or they can go on our website, but get hold of me at John T, JOHNT at Exepron, EXEPRON.com. That stands for Execution Project Network, EXEPRON, John T at Exepron.com. That's it.
Sounds good. And I'll put a link to both the company as well as your email in the description. And any last words for the audience?
No, other than that, I encourage people to explore things that they don't like. Anything that clashes, jars, or makes them feel, upsets them, explore it, because you're missing an assumption.
Awesome.